7 of 9 of those robbery suspects were in court today. Their ages range from 19 to 24 years old, all accused of the series of robberies. Attorneys today said that they would mainly come up to pedestrians and target their cell phones or their jewelry.
Right now we have 13 counts of robbery charged. However, a couple of those counts involve multiple victims on a single incident.
Deputy District Attorney Andrew Aguilar detailing 7 of the 9 suspects in court today accused of committing a series of pedestrian street robberies between August 23rd and September 22nd throughout San Diego, as well as in La Mesa and Chula Vista, where a handgun was believed to be used in 2 of the crimes.
The primary charges are all robbery charges. The 5 defendants who were part of the barricading themselves into an apartment are charged with 2 counts of felony false imprisonment.
All 7 pleaded not guilty. The judge ordered we not show their faces in court. While 2 suspects were arrested and arraigned 2 weeks ago, police arrested the 7 remaining defendants following a 7-hour SWAT standoff at a City Heights apartment Friday.
There was some violence, some struggles in a couple of the cases.
The names of the 7 arraigned include Christopher Butler, Thunderhawk Foster, Byron Haynes, Dacquary Nelson, Jalen Davis, Jeremiah Henry, Alexander Horton, Sebastian Bays, and Yvonne Johnson. The time any of the defendants could serve varies.
One defendant who is charged only with charges relating to the SWAT standoff, a little under 5 years, up to one defendant charged in all 13 robberies, facing multiple life counts.
Some of the victims of the robberies were college students. The 7 arraigned today are due back in court next Friday, October 4th.